5 dimensions, 10 kingdoms, 9 cities, 1 story. Welcome to Arclanders Assemble, the weekly podcast of the Arcverse. Each week, Teamverse will take you on a guided tour from the streets of Arc to the icebound islands of Celestium. There'll be GMing tips, world-building advice, plus monsters, heroes and lore. Join us for this ride through our 5th edition compatible universe and answer the call to arms, Arclanders Assemble! Hi there everybody, and welcome once again to the Arclanders Assemble podcast. And there's a load of stuff to talk about this week. So much has been happening in the Arcverse, it's hard to know where to begin. We'll cover the news in a moment, and then we're going to get on to our main kind of handy feature, as I like to think of it, all about kickstarting and how to kind of position yourself as a Kickstarter in terms of your goals and what you're trying to achieve and all that kind of stuff. And the number one most catastrophic mistake I think that the first timer Kickstarters make, and it's so avoidable. Okay, well, we'll come to that in a little bit. And then we're going to talk a bit about the cosmology of the Arcverse, the Graces and the Fae, and what's happening there, and all that kind of thing. But anyway, let's dive into the news. Excuse me. Okay, so very, very exciting times here at Arcverse HQ. So here we've got I'm sure you know if you've been listening to this, we've got our Kickstarter coming in about 3 weeks now. So it's coming on the 15th of November, which goes live, the Book of the Phantasm. The Phantasm is a new campaign location, an entirely separate reality that exists alongside the mortal realm. It's born of the ashes of the Keeper himself, and has been fashioned that way, and it's a kind of a sort of a contested, battled over world, sort of remnants of the Keeper's mind, basically, in avatar form, fighting it out with Onychius, the trickster, Astragon, one of the primal spirits of the universe, who created the Phantasm and kind of trapped them there. And this is going to have huge implications for the Arcverse, because at some point the Phantasm and the mortal realm shall meet, particularly when we get onto the great wars that are coming to the Arcverse. So there's more we can kind of reveal to you now. After the next Kickstarter we're going to do is the Book of the Fae, and then we are working towards Arclands 2.0, which I can reveal to you now is going to be called Arclands Fire and Fate. And Fire and Fate will be situated at a particular time once we've told a whole bunch of story. The Arcverse is going to be in some terribly dire circumstances. Some of the key locations will have been devastated, and the unknown threat which is emerging across the Arcverse will have situated itself right smack bang in the middle of the Arclands. So the great nemesis, whose name is unknown at the moment, shall be revealed soon. Now, this might seem like I've just taken this from the last episode of The Rings of Power, which has got a bit of a slagging, but I generally thought was absolutely amazing. And I haven't really, because these ideas have been kind of long in the making. Though, that said, of course, everything we do here in sci-fi and fantasy is kind of influenced by people like J.R.R. Tolkien, and there are basically no original ideas. You know, we've all got to take unoriginal ideas and make the best of them, and original for original's sake is just simply annoying. But I think we knew that. So that's the kind of the progression of books we've got. As I said, the Book of the Phantasm, the Book of the Fae, Arclands Fire and Fate, and then finally finally, this is probably 2025, I'm thinking, will be the Book of Damnation. And that's going to be a cracker. I've barely written a word of it yet, and it's exciting me. So the Book of the Fae we'll talk a little bit about in a little while. We have been in conversation with some new writers. We're assembling a pool of script writers to create the first Arcverse podcast, Arcverse dramatic podcast, hopefully going into production about this time next year. Or not going into production, but actually with you this time next year. We should be kind of writing it hopefully from the spring onwards, and then really starting to record, and we have got some cracking voice actors lined up, and it's going to be really exciting. It's going to be an original narrative. You might have been reading the first few chapters of A Fire in the Heart of Knowing. We aim to have that A Fire in the Heart of Knowing completed by summer next year. So there'll be some kind of overlap between these two stories, and obviously everything is connected in the Arcverse and everything is related. But we are telling the big story of the Arcverse. This is going to be a really awesome new way of doing it, and we're super excited. So this is our way of kind of reaching out to people who maybe they like fantasy, but they're not necessarily role players. So yes, really looking forward to that. It's going to be so cool. I think that's kind of it for now in terms of everything we're doing and working on. So let's dive into a little bit of Kickstarter chat. I haven't gone to the trouble of creating some little sound effect to kind of announce Kickstarter chat, but you can imagine we're segging from one bit into another. Okay, so let's start from the standpoint that you are preparing your first Kickstarter, because if you're not, if it's your second or third or fourth, then you don't need to listen to me. You know what you're doing. As long as you're on your second, third or fourth successful one, if you keep making the same mistakes all the time, you need to have a word with yourself about what's going on here. But let's assume that you are on number one, and it's a difficult time. It's a very nerve-wracking time, because you've already put in many hours to creating your product, your whatever it is. It might be a core book that you're trying to kickstart. It might be a zine. It might be something else. But let's assume that really the product is at least 2/3 created. That's where I like to get to before I start to do a launch. Because otherwise, if you do a launch without there being a product in mind, you cause yourself all sorts of pain afterwards. And you're thinking there are all sorts of questions to answer. You need to go through all the faff of setting up, banking details and making sure you're not money laundering and all that kind of thing, and telling your story. And the one that often people get very wound up about is how much do I ask for? And that's a heck of a good question. And it does depend on what you are creating. But my rule of thumb is you need to be asking for the smallest viable amount of money possible. Now that might echo in your ears and you think, what? Why would I be asking for as little as possible? Well, perhaps if we leave out things like kind of Indiegogo for a moment, Kickstarter is of course an all or nothing platform. And on your first campaign, you need your first campaign to be a knockout of the park success. And so you need your campaign to fund for your own morale, your self-worth, for the credibility that others place in this new brand you're creating. You need this to be a success. And so success is being funded, and success is getting to your funding goal. Ideally, you want to get your funding goal plus at least 10%, because you will have people who will inevitably drop out. You'll have people who will cancel their pledges, people whose pledges will bounce because they won't have the money, and all these sorts of things. So you need that cushion of an additional 10%. Now, we are all guilty of writing checks in our heads. You know, you look at some of the figures raised on Kickstarter. You know, some people raise, you know, over $1 million, and this is amazing, and it's this life-altering and life-changing kind of money. But for us to begin with, we just need one success. That will give you such an enormous boost to carry on building what you're doing, and it will cement for you a tribe of 80, 100, maybe 200 backers. 200 people that believe in you, but there are also 200 contacts, and this is kind of what the beauty of Kickstarter really is. Now, you could write a new roleplay game or supplement for D&D, or another RPG that you can get an open license for, and put it on DriveThru RPG or one of these other platforms, and it'll sell a bit, and you'll get an audience, and in theory, you don't need to go through the trouble of doing a Kickstarter. Lots of the times, the Kickstarter, you'll make enough money to do the print run and do the post and packaging, and maybe you'll have some money left over, which you're always wise to kind of reinvest in your running costs. I think with Kickstarter for a while, you have to go, well, this isn't going to make any money. We're not going to be rolling in cash for a long, long time. But what it will do is it will give me access to a permanent audience of several hundred people who have paid money for my stuff, and they're your hot leads. They're the people, if they've bought from you once, the chances of them buying from you again are very, very high if you treat them well. And in a way, they're more valuable than the initial amount of money you raise. I mean, you might raise an absolute ton, I don't know. But the chances are, if 2/3 of Kickstarters don't fund at all, if you're in the 33% that does, this is your first time, the chances are you'll break even with a little bit besides. And that is a superb success. That's a superb success. You are going to people you've never met before with a proposition for sometimes quite a bit of money for them to invest in. And if you achieve that, you've done incredibly well. So that being so, who the hell is going out there asking for $20,000, $50,000? Why? Why do it? It's madness. It's madness. You can do that when you've done half a dozen successful Kickstarters and you've gone, you've raised $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. But on your first go, no one's ever heard of you. You will like you, you will trust you, you will like your idea, you will trust your idea, but they won't do. And rightly so. Because people are very wary of being burned or being sent something that's crap, or not being sent anything at all. And if they take any punt on you at all, that's a massive endorsement. So this is why I'm saying set your goal at the smallest viable amount you can. If you're just doing a zine that is digital only and won't cost you anything at all, other than a bit of art, work out what the artwork is going to cost you, and maybe any other overheads and costs. Don't factor in my time and effort and try to give yourself a wage. Don't do that. You're working for free. And set that you'll set your fixed costs as your target for funding. You'll probably go over your goal. The chances are, if you do all the other parts of the Kickstarter right, you'll go over your goal anyway. But if you are setting the bar 10 or 20 times higher than it needs to be, then this is madness. I generally don't understand why this happens. Sometimes you look at someone's Kickstarter and they're selling they're trying to kickstart a new D&D 5e book, which is 150 pages and something like that, and probably the unit cost is going to be like £10 or £12 pounds or 15 or 16 US dollars. And they're looking for funding goals of $30,000. Why? I mean, okay, yeah, sure, we're all skint, we all got other stuff to pay for, but this is not how to do it. Then you see them raising $2,500, and the heartbreaking truth is they only needed to set it at their bar at $2,000, and they'd have done it on the first day, and then they would have the money, and that would have funded the next Kickstarter, which could have been bigger, and the one after that, which could have been bigger. So this is just kamikaze behavior. And you see, I've talked to a couple of people who've done this, and they normally say, well, the reason we didn't fund was for this, that, or the other reason. There was something other big launching at that time, or Kickstarter had changed its algorithm. Yeah, baloney. That's not the case. You gotta stop kidding yourself here. The point is that once you set a goal of that size, you are absolutely beating yourself with sticks to manage to kind of get anywhere at all. And so you got to be super careful in this kind of initial stage of things, that you're not kind of crippling yourself from day one. Now, like I said, the good news is that in most cases, what will happen is you will beat your goal. In every Kickstarter I've done, and they've all been modest, I am not claiming for a moment that here at the Arcverse we do 10, 20, 50, 100 grand Kickstarters. We're normally around the kind of the 4 or the 5 mark at the moment, and we're applying kind of all our sort of Wile E. Coyote stores of dynamite for the next Kickstarter to kind of blast through that, and hopefully aiming for that the 10 mark. Some people manage to smash through much, much better than we do, and they're obviously way better at marketing. But we are kind of like the everyman Kickstarter. We are just your average Kickstarter Joes here, and we have results which are roughly equivalent to what most people experience on Kickstarter. We are the kind of the middling sorts, and that's why I think we've got some good advice here. We're speaking to the other average Joes of the world. And there are more people that get your average Joe results than get the kind of the rock star results. And that's simply statistics for you. Anyway, so we are trying to break through to that next tier of Kickstarters with the Book of the Phantasm. That is our goal, and it will remain to be seen if we get there. And so when you achieve your funding goal, what you achieve is enough revenue to make you sure your Kickstarter happens, plus a little bit on the side, hopefully. But also you build your tribe. Now, if you treat these people well, my God, they've just gone out of their way to make your dream come true. So you should be crawling through mud over broken glass for these guys. They are your superheroes. They have believed in you enough to make something which, let's face it, a few years ago, before the advent of crowdfunding and internet 2.0, none of this would have been possible. Your dream would not have been possible. So yeah, love these guys. And if you treat them well, they will be part of your tribe, and it's the tribe you're trying to build. Okay, the tribe that will keep you fed, the tribe that will eventually help you to reach the knock it out of the park Kickstarters, the Rockstar Kickstarters. And those are all possible in the fullness of time. But anyway, so the point being, lowest, smallest possible viable sum is what you're trying to raise. Don't do it. If you have printing overheads, work those out. Work the post and packaging out. Work out anything else that you're trying to pay for. If you can avoid it, don't clutter up your Kickstarter with miniatures and other bits and bobs and dice towers and all this stuff, because no one cares about that. They want the core product, and they want the core product to be good. When you are getting to the size of like kind of Humblewood and stuff like that, and the One Ring people, I forget who they call it. It'll come to me. 3D gaming, yeah. When you're that size, then you can you can offer in a Kickstarter a whole bunch of stuff. But for now, keep it simple. Keep it viable. Keep it the smallest viable goal you can get to, and you'll make your first Kickstarter way easier. Okay, cool. Right, so I want to delve into a little bit. We've been talking a lot recently about the kind of the cosmology of the Arcverse, the kind of the celestial story of the Arcverse, and I'll put a couple of links in the show notes about recent articles I've done about the celestial realm. But as we're moving forward, you're going to be writing the Book of the Fae pretty soon. I want to tell you a kind of a story. Okay, it goes like this. Okay, so as we know, the Keeper, the one god of the universe, who is at some point kind of infallible, very quickly, when he begins to shape the first dimension he creates, the celestial realm, he does so by flinging the astragon into the second dimension he creates, which is damnation, tricking them, throwing them into the darkness, and creating the Athavanir, his 7 servants, in order to kind of keep a lid on damnation, and to manage the celestial realm. He does so, but the two things that happen that the Keeper doesn't like and is troubled by is firstly, damnation keeps growing. It grows like some giant sort of like almost squid-like being. It's these sort of long kind of like rather sort of stone-like tentacles sprout out across the darkness towards the celestial realm. He doesn't like that. The second more troubling thing that happens is the Tralanvanir emerge. The Tralanvanir are the Graces. They are, the angels of the celestial realm. However, the Keeper never created them himself. They spontaneously emerge, and it is the energy of the Athavanir that create them, the 7 servants of the Keeper. The Keeper creates other servants, the Lothavanir, who are his smiths and engineers and builders and makers. And they are, well, they'll come into the story in a little bit, but the Keeper creates his own kind of secret police, the Shuravai, who look like the Graces. He appears before the Tralanvanir and says, I am your father, and all this stuff, which isn't true. And then the Shuravai become the kind of the secret enforcers, finding descending Graces who don't quite believe the Keeper's story and eliminating them. When the Graces work this out, they wage a war against the Keeper and almost overthrow him. They sort of come march on his or fly using the raptors on his great throne at Asavatal. And when they arrive there, all of a sudden the skies go dark, and there are huge quakes of lightning and this dark cloud with this terrible glowing red light inside it turns up, and this is the Devourer. The Devourer threatens to destroy everything, not just Celestium but also damnation. And the Devourer is so dangerous and so terrible that the rebel Graces very quickly lay down their arms and say, yes, we'll fight alongside you, the Keeper. The Keeper obviously needs as many hands as he can get to defeat the Devourer, but he doesn't forget that he needs to do something about the rebels before this war is over. And then in the last moment of the war, which is fought all over the place, it's fought in what becomes the Grey Kingdom. The Grey Kingdom is a world, Ulcaras, that was created by the Lothavanir as a kind of a side project. The Lothavanir is thoroughly sick of the Keeper at this point, and they want to create their own world that they can go and rule as gods. and he finds out and lures the Devourer there to battle it, and knowing that it will destroy their world. So he then decides to deal with the Tralanvenir, the rebel Graces, and in the last battle against the Devourer in Damnation, when it looks like the battle is won, he opens a portal back to the Celestial Realm to lead his armies out of Damnation, but he leaves the rebel Graces behind on purpose, who are destroyed by the evil legions of Damnation, who he has already made a deal with. The Devourer is trapped in a prison of the Keeper's making, which turns out to be a universe that looks very much like our own. A universe of stars and nebula and that sort of thing, and the Devourer is sucked into that and trapped in every atom of it, spread out so far as he's diluted. The Keeper thinks that all his troubles are over and sort of retreats to Celestium, badly wounded in the Devourer War, and a small number of the surviving rebel Graces escape from Damnation and make it to the mortal realm. And then they discover that the chaos of the Keeper and the chaos of the Devourer and the order of the Keeper combined create the conditions for life. And they find a world they call Yaran, which means sanctuary, which is actually the world of Hermia that becomes the world of the Arclands. And some of the majority of them, who cannot bear the silence and the solitude of the ages, because they're essentially on a barren rock in space until it develops weather systems and mountains and forests and all that kind of thing. They simply create sleep chambers for themselves in the earth, and that's where they go, and they go to sleep for millions of years. The others discover that the Lothavenir have left a little gift for them. Because the Lothavenir made all this for the Keeper, because that's what they do. And they'd left the gift of a kind of song, and that the universe has its own song, its own melody, if you will. And this song contains within it magic, and as they listen to the song, they are transformed into demigod creatures called the Sayadthe. And the Sayadthe discover that there's also a small pocket dimension for them where they can live, called Hayaraka. And in Hayaraka, gradually over time, when the world becomes teeming with life, the first spirits that they recognize as being sentient appear to them in Hayaraka, called the Fae. Some of them humanoid, some of them animal, some of them fairy. And eventually, the Sayadthe lead the Fae into the mortal realm and begin to establish the first civilizations there. And this predates humanity, many, many times over. And well, there's another story about how humanity came to be. And so the Keeper's kind of ignored the mortal realm for a long, long time. He just thinks it should, in theory, be a barren desert just for locking his nemesis away. However, when it transpires that life has emerged there, again, most unexpectedly, he's very unhappy about this, and sends the Shuravai to investigate. He realises he cannot set foot in the mortal realm because the Lothavenir, who have now vanished and fled the Keeper, they created a series of flaws in the mortal realm, meaning that if something as powerful as the Keeper stepped into it, it would crack the mortal realm open. It wouldn't be able to hold his weight, in essence. And if it's cracked open, the Devourer will get out and devour everything. So the Keeper is kind of a little bit in checkmate. He can only send his minions into the mortal realm, but he himself can't enter it. And part of this taps into the fact that the Keeper, this is the thing we always try to do with the Keeper, is take the idea of an omnipotent God that can't actually get away with everything he wants all the time. And because he's become increasingly susceptible to human failings like vanity and arrogance and cruelty, this kind of over time gradually limits his power more and more. And all of this happens before the Sundering, by the way. So as the Sayadthe help the Fae to develop civilizations, eventually the Keeper has to send the Shurivai to cause trouble. And the Shurivai and the Phalanx, who are the loyal Gracers, they manage to piece together an army, or they present themselves as an army, to overthrow the first Fae kingdoms. They try to turn the Fae kingdoms against one another with little effect, but they haven't got the numbers, and so the Keeper has to resort to his old trick of calling on help from damnation. The Keeper's got no qualms about this. The Keeper doesn't see good and evil in that way, heaven and hell in that way, celestium and damnation in that way. He simply sees numbers and who he needs in order to defeat the Fae, who are quite a powerful adversary. And he finds in damnation a being called the Marshal of the Night. And the Marshal of the Night will recur, he will return when we get to Arkland's Fire and Fate. I won't do a spoiler alert for how the wars go. The Keeper, other than to say that for the most part the Fae defeat the Keeper, and the Fae exist with a kind of a lingering hatred of the Keeper. But if we look at the world as it is now, the Fae are virtually extinct. They are trapped inside the forest of Amara, prisoners of this powerful entity, the Thorn King, and all around humanity has its empires and religion. And these things are connected. The kind of club that eventually the Keeper uses to beat the Fae into submission with is humanity itself, and its love for dominion and empire, and its love for these kind of empires of the mind, which one could describe Aruvianism as the core religion. So that's just a bit of story for you, really, about the kind of the journey from the celestial realm to looking at the Fae themselves. And we'll be revealing a lot more about that in the kind of the weeks and the months to come as we start to lay down more ideas on the Fae. The Fae are more than simply kind of elves as you would imagine them. The Fae spirit are the beings that have a spark of energy within them called Fae fire, and Fae fire allows the Fae to affect and alter and manipulate and move backwards and forwards through time itself. So Fae fire is all about time. Anyway, that's the story for our whole of the time. We've done recently the Arklander, which you may have downloaded and read. If not, please get it. It's awesome. The Arklander Tales from the Arcverse. And we are planning, maybe not for next edition, but perhaps for edition 3, a special on Spellforgers and Fate, and introducing the idea of Dark Fate and Fallen Forges. So shame we couldn't get it right out for Halloween, really, but we're going kind of into some really sort of arcane and slightly eldritchy kind of places with all of that. So yeah, look out for that anyway. Okay, so we're drawing a little bit to a close, and I hope you're finding this podcast useful. We're trying to kind of keep that mix of things we're doing and things that you actually want to hear about. No, only kidding. Things that we're doing, but also stuff that is practicable for you as world builders and roleplay gamers and Kickstarters, just to put into practice and start to do. So, what we'd really love to hear is if you are doing a Kickstarter, give us a shout, let us know, and we'd love to look at it and promote it and generally kind of celebrate it, because there's nothing as awesome as people really getting out there to give things a punt and give things a try and give things a shot. Next week on the Arclanders Assemble podcast, we're going to be looking a bit more at the knights of the Arcverse and the knightly orders and how they work and sort of how they function. You can play in the Spellforger's Companion a knight character who has a kind of like a weapons specialism because of an order they're part of. But I think it's kind of richer and more complex than that. So look out for that, and we'll do that next time. And we'll start to tell you a little bit more about the big story that is coming, and that we've been writing for such a long time, but is now being churned out almost on a daily basis. Anyway, it's going to be a slightly shorter one today, so I hope you found this useful. And do give us a shout. You can find us on Twitter at VerseHome. You can find us on Discord, Arcland's on Discord, and you can follow all the links down below if you want to get in touch. Anyway, do give us a shout. Do get in touch, and we'd love to hear from you soon.
If you enjoyed Arclanders Assemble, remember to subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends or give us a shout out. We'll need an army to stop the darkness that's coming. You can find us on Discord, World Anvil, YouTube, Twitter, DriveThru RPG and Kickstarter, and the links are available in the show notes. Catch next week's episode on iTunes, Spotify and all good pod hosters, and come and find us on social media. We'd love your feedback.